Buffalo Bills fans, what's going on? Welcome into a live reaction of the Bills versus Pittsburgh Steelers. You are watching the Built in Buffalo Network. This is Billsology every Saturday night, 9 o'clock. I am Dave Myers. I'm joined by my co-founder, Akeem Richens. Hey, Rich, what's going on, man?
Yes, yes, ARich, Akeem Riches. This is indeed built in Buffalo DM3. It's 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 an interesting night, right? It's a lot of things we could take into perspective, but again, we can't overreact because at the end of the day, this is the preseason. I'm doing well, my friend. I'm doing well.
All right, we're going to get into it. Everything, we're going to break down everything. Like Akeem said, we're going to try not to overreact to a lot of stuff. It is the good, the bad, and the questionable. Next. Yes, you are watching Built in Buffalo. Akeem's there somewhere. He's over there somewhere. Again, this is going to be, I know the game is still going on. We were going to do a post game, but it's getting kind of late. So we wanted to start this right at 9 o'clock, like we usually tip off the show at 9. A lot of stuff has happened. A lot of stuff is still happening. We're going to try to break down as much as we can. Again, it's preseason. We're going to try not to overreact to everything. So, with that being said, I know the game is still going on, but the first things first. It was nice to be able to see Josh Allen go out there with the ones, the starting offensive line. It was nice to see him get some throws in. It was nice to see him out there playing. Okay, that's the first positive, right? So the first positive, it was good to see, him knock off some rust, him get some reps. Obviously, I didn't think that they were going to open up the playbook too much. Didn't seem like they were doing a lot of different things that they didn't do last year. I did like, however, that there was some underneath stuff that was developing, as the drives were progressing before they got hindered by penalties. And we'll get into all that. But
Mhm.
Akeem, what was your first impressions of Josh Allen tonight? You think he looked good? You think there was a little rust still there, or what was your thoughts?
I believe he went 7 for 10. What, 64 yards, if I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I think Josh Allen did all that he can do playing the quarterback position for the Buffalo Bills. There was definitely some things he had to get adjusted to with the offensive line. I think there was struggles up front. I think there was struggles up front with the entire offensive line, and for the type of protection that he did get. I think as an individual, Josh Allen did as much as he could do at the quarterback position, and I'm glad we took him out the game.
You have a little bit of static, little feedback there, Akeem. I'm not sure if that's where that's coming from, but yeah, I mean, it was hard for him to get into any sort of rhythm tonight because it seems like every time there was a drive that was going, obviously the first drive was 3 and out, but after that, like it seemed like he was making some nice plays. I liked, the first pass right to Kincaid was a nice catch, and we'll talk about Kincaid here in a little bit because he's part of the good, bad, and questionable. Um, but it seemed like it was just everything was just stalled. There was either a holding penalty, there was a false start, there was just some stuff with the offensive line that you hate to see it. If it's going to happen, let it happen. I guess in preseason, I know these guys are trying to knock the rust off, and this is first, live action ones on ones that the Bills have had since February, right? So it's good to see that. I think I wanted to see more from, you know, Osiris Torrance. I wanted to see more from McGovern. I wanted to see how these guys were going to gel. And again, I'm not going to overreact. It's preseason. I understand the reps matter, snap counts matter. Putting games under your belt matters. This team needs to learn to be a cohesive unit. But I'm a little concerned with the offensive line. I shouldn't say a little concerned. I'm a lot concerned, and I feel like a broken record. I feel like this is a story that we've told now for quite some time. And again, with the caveat of all this stuff, I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to preface everything by saying it was preseason. Okay. This was first live game action for these 5 guys playing together and, playing an actual football game. But I'm concerned with the tackle play, not just with Spencer Brown, but Deion Dawkins didn't look great. I'm a little concerned, with the fact that we've now been told that Spencer Brown is in year 3 and he should be getting better. This is typically the year when offensive linemen start to learn their craft. But I feel like he's making the same mistakes. The holding penalty, Lance, we were in our group chat and Lance was telling me, well, he had to hold or else Josh was going to get sacked. My problem is he didn't get out of his stance fast enough. So he had to, he had to turn and hold. And I don't know if more snaps will help, if more reps will help, if he's got to play the entire 3rd preseason game. I don't know what it's going to take for that to go away, that part of his game to go away, where he's getting beat. His reaction time is slow. He can't get his feet set. He can't put his hands on a defender. It's just, I don't feel like it's getting any better. And I don't want to just beat on Spencer Brown because I don't think the offensive line as a whole looked good at all tonight. So what's your takes on the offensive line, Akeem?
It's been 6 years. We've been having this discussion with the offensive line and having issues with offensive line play and protecting our prized possession in Josh Allen. So after a number of years, it's like, okay, I understand 1 year, right? It's the offensive line play. You have to improve. You want to improve it. I can understand 2 years, but now you're getting into year 3 and into year 4 and into year 5. And it's like, how much times can we actually blame the offensive line? It's like, I understand this preseason. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have a very good defensive front. But it comes a time where we start having to look at, depending on what happens in the season, we have to start looking at, okay, why are we not doing the necessary things to make the necessary investments to upgrade the offensive line? Because ultimately, that's going to protect and save and prolong our quarterback, our franchise quarterback career in Josh Allen. We've seen what happened with Andrew Luck in the Indianapolis Colts. He got sacked so much times that brought him into retirement during his prime, right? So we want to be able to avoid that. So now I have to start looking. Now it's preseason. Let's not overreact. There's a lot of season. It's all of the regular season left to play. But we're going to have to start looking at the front office in terms of, why are we not addressing this offensive line situation? Why are we continuously having to talk about protecting Josh Allen? Kansas City Chiefs lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 31-9 in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes got sacked 3 times. He was hurried 9 times. You know what the Kansas City Chiefs did that offseason? They went and drafted Creed Humphrey, who's one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. They went and drafted Trey Smith, who was looked at as a steal of the draft. They went and traded for Orlando Brown, who struggled early but played well in the second half of the season. And they went and signed Joe Turney. Where they got the money from, I don't know. But they made it their business to get the money to sign Joe Turney to that lucrative contract, and it paid off. So if the Kansas City Chiefs said, you know what, and Patrick Mahomes is worth $500 million. So don't tell me about the money. Don't tell me about the contract, right? So at some point, we're going to have to look at Brandon Beane and that Bills front office in terms of why we're not protecting our prized possession better than we should be.
I agree with you 100%. 100%. I feel like we're beating a dead horse because I don't know what to take of this game. There was so many penalties then and so many self-inflicted wounds. I don't even know, to be honest with you, if we can look at the snaps that these guys took all across the front 5 of the starting line and get a get a very fair assessment of the play. I mean, drives were stalled. We don't know what the offense would have done inside the red zone. We don't know what the offense would have done, on the opposing field, the opposing team's field. Like there's a lot of things that we didn't get to see because there was always penalties killing drives. And we did get to see, Gabe Davis looks promising, right? Dalton Kincaid looks very good. Diggs had a reception, but there was no run game. James Cook had a couple carries. Latavius Murray had a couple carries, but the drives were all stalled by penalties. So I think it's just going to have to. I put a tweet out right before we came on, and it basically said that if I'm Brandon Beane, and I'm not overreacting, I'm just saying with the injury to Tommy Doyle now, we had Brendan Shell retire. It's getting pretty thin for the tackle position. And you're going to need depth because if you're going to rely on Spencer Brown for 17 games, we may be in a situation that we're not comfortable talking about. So my tweet was the Bills need to absolutely be looking for a tackle. Swing tackle would be nice. A middle linebacker and a QB2. Someone to be QB2. Because I'll tell you right now, Terrell Dotson, he ain't it. That 62-yard touchdown run by Warren, he got lost in the sauce. He took the really bad angle and then trying to recover from it looked like he was just jogging down the field as Poyer was trying to chase him down. What's your thoughts? Because AJ Klein came in and was playing with the ones. We don't want to start the season against the New York Jets and Dalvin Cook now and Aaron Rodgers and the offense that Aaron Rodgers can run. He'll find mismatches. And we cannot start the season with AJ Klein opposite of Matt Milano. What's your thoughts on the middle linebacker position?
Again, I'm going to preface this by saying it's only preseason. And being that it's only preseason, this is a good thing that this happened because now we have a lot of film to dissect on Sunday and Monday, right? There's a lot of things that the Buffalo Bills as an entire team can work on based on this film because they put a lot of bad film out there. But when dissecting the middle linebacker position, Tyrell Dodson, can we be surprised? Let's really think about it. Tyrell Dodson was a weak side linebacker before trying to transition over to a middle linebacker. Terrell Bernard is a third round pick who wasn't necessarily built to be a middle linebacker in the NFL. Bale Inspector is a 7th round pick. So I'm not surprised based on the players that we have. I cannot be surprised. I can't blame these players. I understand that these players are the guys and the product that's on the field, but we have to find an adequate replacement in the offseason. None of these guys are middle linebackers, and we're asking them to play middle linebackers. Now, when they're not doing an adequate job, we expect to put all these blame on these guys. No, these guys was put in unfair positions, if you ask me. So I'm not surprised that we have this situation and we have these concerns because, to be honest, we don't have an adequate middle linebacker on this team, and we was trying to make one based on the defense that Sean McDermott is going to bring, right? Based on the scheme and that he's going to implement that's supposed to be different from Leslie Frazier. So we looked at it as, you know what? We trust Sean McDermott. He came from the Carolinas Panthers team, having a top 10 defense 4 out the last 6 seasons before transitioning over to the Buffalo Bills as a head coach. So let's trust this guy, even though it doesn't look and it doesn't appear that we have a middle linebacker on the roster. We have Sean McDermott. We're going to trust him and trust his defense to see that we can mold the most important position on the defense is the middle linebacker position. And thus far, it doesn't look as if we're doing that. But again, it's only preseason.
I mean, it's a good comment that I'm going to put it back up from Trey Williams, because I was getting ready to say this when he put this comment in here is next week, why don't you just put Dorian Williams? If you're not going to make any personnel moves, Okay, because for whatever reason, you want to try to make work what you think you can make work, if we agree with it or not, right? If Akeem and DM3 agree with the guys on the roster or not, if that's who they're going to roll out to start the season and they're just trying to figure out which the best pieces to put into the puzzle of McDermott's defense, next week, please just roll out Dorian Williams and start him at middle linebacker. And at least let's see what he has. Now, everybody, when he was drafted, everybody was all about we just drafted another off-ball linebacker 2 years in a row in the third round. Why do we keep doing that? Well, maybe he's not. Press conference, Brandon Beane, right after the draft. We don't know what he is yet. We're going to have to figure that out. I haven't seen anything come out from practice, from training camp, from nothing saying that he's running with the ones at middle linebacker. I think there was a sniff of it last week that he ran a few reps with Matt Milano, but I haven't seen anything. So did we fail in that draft pick? Did we not scout the pick correctly? Because what are you going to do with 3 off-ball linebackers and Matt Milano? You got Balen Spector, Terrell Bernard, Tyrell Dotson, Dorian Williams. I'm sorry, 4. Because I'm sorry, but Terrell Dotson is not the starting middle linebacker on this team. He's a good depth piece, and neither is AJ Klein. So again, I don't want to get too much into the overreacting process of a preseason game, because as I alluded to before we came on, I was talking to Lance and I was talking to Akeem, and the Bills teams of the 90s that were going to the Super Bowls, they played like shit in the preseason. They would lose almost every game in the preseason every single year, and then week 1 happens and it's like a switch came on. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, because we live in a different time and the game has changed tenfold from then, but I think everybody wanted to see what we were going to get from Terrell Dotson this game. We wanted to see what we were going to get, and he was pulled pretty quick for AJ Klein. So there's the comments from McDermott saying that he's very concerned, and it's not the Stephon Diggs very concerned he's not at camp, but he's very concerned about the middle linebacker position. If your head coach who's calling plays is concerned, what's going to happen next? Like, you had guys sitting there in March that were taking pennies on the dollar to play middle linebacker that are veterans in this league. There was a dozen of them that were good, that just one by one, we saw the dominoes fall. And we're thinking to ourselves, well, who's it going to be? We had conversations after the draft, because I think we all thought we were going to draft a middle linebacker early, first or second round. And then if, we thought that was we thought we were going to take Jack Campbell and all these other guys. And now it's a head scratcher, because I honestly hope that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott aren't resting on the roster that we had last year, being able to mask some of that play a little bit, with the safeties that we had, and hoping that they're going to return to form. We have to hope that Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde are going to be all pro safeties. We need them to be. We absolutely need them to be. And again, I put a tweet out saying Father Time is undefeated, because Jordan Poyer looked pretty damn slow trying to chase down a running back and took a horrible angle on it. And I know it's preseason. I'll calm down. I won't overreact, but I just hope that something can happen here. There's a game in 3 weeks. The Bills are going to go play a division rival with a much, much improved offense in 3 weeks on the road on 9/11 in New York. Like, what's the plan? What's the plan? We talked about it a couple weeks ago, but what's the plan here?
The middle linebacker position is arguably the most important position on the defensive side of the ball. Sean McDermott is calling in plays to Tyrell Dotson, his middle linebacker. So he understands the communication firsthand between him and Tyrell Dotson. So for him to say that he has concerns before coming into this game is concerning. Now we expected An undrafted Tyrell Dodson is a solid player, a fine piece. But let's call a spade a spade. He's an undrafted player, and we know sometimes undrafted players move on and play as Hall of Fame caliber players. But sometimes undrafted players are undrafted players for a reason. And even though I think he's a solid piece, we're asking Terrell Dotson to come in now and play the middle linebacker position to understand where everybody lines up, to understand the verbiage that is being communicated to him from Sean McDermott, and be able to reciprocate that verbiage onto the rest of his teammates. And on top of that, be able to play uh, fast and attacking style football and make plays. That's asking a lot from a player like Terrell Dotson. That's no disrespect, but I think the Buffalo Bills front office loves to find those guys that happens to be diamonds in the roughs, and I think we've done a good job in finding Levi Wallace's and Dane Jackson's and Matt Milano in the 5th round and Teron Johnson in the 4th round. But I think we run to that well a bit too much, and it might be it's still preseason, but it might be catching up to us a little bit. We'll see.
You know what you said to start your what you were talking about there was very interesting, because you're talking about McDermott's calling in plays to his middle linebacker, right? And that's last year was Leslie Frazier calling in plays to Jermaine Edmonds. So how confident, like you said, if you're calling in a plays to Terrell Dodson, then after the mic cuts off, it's on him to figure out pre-snap things, movement, figuring out what depth you need your safeties to be at, all that stuff, right? So maybe that's part of the issue, is that he can't pick up the communication piece of being the middle linebacker. Intelligence is a huge part of being an NFL player, especially on defense. We talked about that, and I always talk about Richard Sherman. And I talk about Richard Sherman because when he was getting older, he was obviously still wasn't the fastest DB on the team, but what he lacked in physical ability, he made up for it mentally, putting himself in the positions to be successful. And we're relying on Terrell Dotson, a career special teamer, undrafted free agent special teamer, to call our defense and to identify what's happening, pre-snap and post-snap. And then we want him to identify what hole to hit in the run game. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that Bobby Wagner would have been an immediate fix, but it would have been nice to have a guy like Bobby Wagner that could develop a Dorian Williams if we want to make him a middle linebacker, that can develop a Terrell Bernard, in a Terrell Dodson, that can help develop these guys. Watch this guy who is a Hall of Fame linebacker do it for, even if it's just a year and it's a stopgap, right? Bring him into a championship caliber team to help this team get to the next level, which is winning a Super Bowl. Because right now, I'll tell you right now, what I saw tonight was I'm concerned, and if preseason or not, the defense looked confused. There was no pass rush, and I'm talking about as the game progressed, not the first couple drives, because the Steelers came out and punched the Bills in the face, scored 2 touchdowns. At that point, McDermott's philosophy of what he wanted to do with the rest of the game might have changed. Yes, the starters still stayed in the game up until halftime. The majority of the starters, not all of them. But you have to think, if the Steelers came out and punted and the Bills did whatever they did on their first drive, scored a touchdown, punted, whatever, then you have some momentum. You want to see how these guys react to being in a scoreless game, to being in, going into the second drive, and you can do things a little bit different. You can give them some different looks. But again, I take it all back because it's preseason, and I guarantee Sean McDermott or Ken Dorsey didn't show shit tonight. They didn't. They just dialed up some vanilla plays and said, let's knock the rust off, go crack some skulls, and it's not an excuse for how the defense played to start the game, because you got a guy running free downfield for 62 yards. It's kind of embarrassing, and it's not an all-world running back that's doing it, right? It's it's a little concerning. But okay, we'll move on from the middle linebacker position because we could probably talk about it for a long time.
Right. Right.
Well, let's talk about Dalton Kincaid and more of yes, he's great. Let's talk about the fact that he looks bigger in game action. Would you agree with that? He looks bigger than he actually is in game action. I don't know if it's just the speed of the game. He looks more like Dawson Knox ish size or George Kittle. Like I'm not comparing him to George Kittle, but I think size wise he looks different. But I will say that against the ones, he was pretty unguardable. Like it was a 7-yard, put your foot in the ground and then slant into the middle of the field, catch the ball and cut up field. Like what was your initial reaction seeing him actually get some reps? He got a pass from Josh and then a couple from Barkley. What was your initial reaction to that?
Dalton Kincaid, I really liked what I seen from him, and I actually like the way that the Buffalo Bills is bringing Dalton Kincaid along. Last week, the Buffalo Bills, they wanted to see how he was as a blocker. There's always some talks of how he was going to perform as an inline blocker and his struggles. Well, he proved while he is not the best blocker, he's a willing blocker. And I think he showed some good tape last week, cracking down on some defensive ends, going up the seam and putting, I believe, a linebacker or a DB on his behind. So he showed last week that he's capable and a willing blocker in that aspect of the game. Now, this week, the Buffalo Bills had him in the slot, and I really like what he was able to bring to the offense. He added that, in my opinion, a bigger dimension to what Cole Beasley used to bring to the offense. Right in that slot, he's a big catch radius, silky smooth route runner. He has soft hands, and I like the fact that he brings.
Oh, Akeem, you cut out. Well, we'll try to get Akeem back. But talking about Dalton Kincaid, I do agree that I think it's been as advertised. I mean, he's going to have high expectations because he is a first round pick. So you're always going to have that, it's not fair, but it is what it is. You were taken in the first round. A team saw that much value in you to take you. And I like the fact of his versatility. I think is something different than we get from Dawson Knox. I think we know what he is. I think we already know what his ceiling is. He's going to be a guy that's going to go get you big catches in the red zone. He can make big plays. He's a really good blocker. Helps in the run game a ton. But I want to see more of Dalton Kincaid, and I know we're not going to get that in week 3 preseason because McDermott's going to scale everything back, and Josh probably won't suit up. Diggs, Davis, they probably won't play. So, I don't know. I think it's an added dimension that we were excited about when it happened during the draft, and we should be. The Bills went offense in the draft for the first time since Josh Allen, and then they went offense in the second round, and that leads me to Osiris Torrance. I believe he's the starting right guard right now, and I do like Ryan Bates. I think Ryan Bates brings a ton of value to the team. If you need a guy, you could pick him up and put him in any spot on the line. Any of the 5 spots, wherever you needed to, you can slot him in there. So I do like having him as a depth piece. But if Osiris Torrance right now is your starting right guard and you're comfortable where he's at, where he's developed and what he's going to develop into and continue to grow and progress into that position, you got to think that Ryan Bates might be a guy that is a trade candidate, especially if we're looking at these other positions, because there may be some camp or some preseason casualties on rosters here, but you're not going to find a starting middle linebacker out there. The Bills are going to go to the season with the guys on the roster. I'm pretty convinced of that. I don't know unless you make a trade. The Bills have, I think, 10 draft picks next year. I don't know who's willing to make a trade right now with a top contending team to help them better their roster, unless it's an absolute deal that you just can't refuse. I think the Bills also need to look at, like I said earlier, the Bills need to look at QB2. Matt Barkley is the new Ryan Fitzpatrick. And that's no knock on Ryan Fitzpatrick, because I think everybody in the city of Buffalo, and myself included, I love Ryan Fitzpatrick. I love what he did for this team. trying to keep things together, with bad coaching and stuff like that. But Matt Barkley will play a good game. We'll fall in love with him. We love his sideline antics, his relationship with Josh. We know he does stuff in the community. He's all about Buffalo, but then he follows it up with a stinker. Like 3 interceptions and a fumble tonight playing against 2s and 3s is not going to win you a QB2 job when we thought that you were pretty much, the QB2 after your performance last week, comparing it to Kyle Allen. Now, again, 2 preseason games. I understand the Bills will dive into film and they'll dissect things differently. They're going to look at certain things, but 2 of the interceptions were really bad mental errors. The one was in the red zone, in the end zone. He was trying to feed it into a receiver with 3 guys around him. And then one of the other ones was just a bad read. So I don't know who's available. I'm sure there's some quarterbacks out there. I don't have the list in front of me. But somebody that can be serviceable in case, God forbid, something happens to Josh. We got a scare last year. We did have Case Keenum. I would be a little bit more comfortable with Case Keenum, but we did get a scare last year. And Josh Ruff, he played through it. But Akeem, if you got your audio, you good. What's your thoughts on QB2? I wasn't going to go in this direction, but again, tonight's show, for everybody that's watching, there's no script to it. We're just trying to dissect as much of this preseason game without overreacting too much as possible. So we're going to kind of go a little bit all over the place. Not typical for our shows, typically very structured, and we have segments and stuff. But Akeem, what's your take on QB2? Is he on the roster? Do we need to look elsewhere? Is this an issue? What do you think?
Obviously, QB2 is definitely an issue. I think money comes into play with that, contracts and where do you want to structure your money, the amount of money you do have left, where do you want to use it? And I think the Buffalo Bills made those choices. We've had stronger QB play in the past, but this year it's definitely a concerning one, the QB2 position, and we hope that Josh Allen can stay healthy for the duration of this season. But again, the offensive line is concerning as well. I want to touch on that a little bit. I know you spoke about Osiris Torrance possibly being the starting guard for the Buffalo Bills, and I don't see a player on the offensive line that would prohibit him for being the starter. I think that when you're 6'5", 350, and you have that massive size and that power, and being that we see who else the Buffalo Bills have on that offensive line, you got to go ahead and give this rookie a shot and a chance to work on his mistakes and develop as he plays as a starter. And in terms of Ryan Bates, I wouldn't trade Ryan Bates. I think the ideal position for Ryan Bates for the Buffalo Bills offensive line is to be that 6th offensive lineman, just in case whoever gets hurt. He has the ability to play all 5 positions on the offensive line for the Buffalo Bills. And I think Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane views that as valuable for the offensive line depth for the Bills, even if he's not the starting guard for the Bills. So I wouldn't trade Ryan Bates if I was the Buffalo Bills front office, but you never know what may happen. Carson Wentz and guys like that are definitely guys I'm looking at for the quarterback 2 position for the Bills, because it's definitely concerning after Josh Allen.
I was literally just looking at the free agents: Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Nick Foles, Chase Daniel, and then some other guys that nobody's probably ever heard of. Well, let me throw this out there. Would you take a flyer on Trey Lance?
I would.
Would you take?
I would.
If San Francisco said, "We'll give you Lance for a third," since we have that, the third that we got for Tremaine Edmonds, would you take Trey Lance for, I don't know, maybe a year just to have him behind Josh?
I think a third is too high.
Really?
Yeah, I think I think a third is too high. Now I understand we have 2/3, but for Trey Lance, he has a lot of ability. He has a lot of ability, but can we bring that potential, and then we bring that ability to fruition? Are you willing to put a third round pick on the line for a quarterback that is probably not going to start because you have a guy in Josh Allen? So in terms of a third round pick, I'm not too sure, but if we could get him for a fourth, fifth round pick, I would definitely take a flyer on the Trey Lance.
The reason why I say that is because, the 49ers, obviously, Brock Purdy is the guy, right? I think Shanahan's in love with Brock Purdy. And then, I just don't know. Sam Darnold's there, and I think you could probably rely on Sam Darnold just because Trey Lance doesn't have the experience, because he played, he's been in the league 3 years, but he missed all of last year with a broken leg. And then I just think skill set wise, like, you're not altering too much of the playbook for what you want to do with Josh. But we don't also know that Ken Dorsey's not trying to alter the playbook somewhat to get away from the designed runs and the stuff that Daboll used to like force down our throats, which we used to get mad at. But then when Josh would rip off a 28 or 30-yard run, we'd be like, okay, I see why you do the designed runs. I don't know. I was just thinking skill set wise. I'm going to give an update on the game because it just ended 27-15. Steelers win. But it looks like Kyle Allen might be QB2 now. I think this is going to go back and forth. He threw a touchdown to Justin Shorter. Again, he went 12 for 15, $112. Barkley went 7 for 12, 93 and 3 picks and a fumble. Josh was 7 for 10 for 64. So, all right, you want to talk about receivers? Because I think this could be a really in-depth conversation about what the wide receivers and skill position players on this team.
Definitely, let's do it.
All right, so I think we know. Here's my okay. So I'm gonna throw this one at you. So we know who 1 and 2 is, right? Obviously, we know it's Diggs and Davis, right? So, and this isn't the question, but do we think that Trent Sherfield is wide receiver 3 at this point?
I think he's definitely. I think he's definitely in line to get some snaps, especially if Deontay Hardy is going to be a starting kick or punt returner. I think Trent Sherfield is definitely in line to get some snaps out at wide receiver 3.
So, do you think that Deontay Hardy is a roster lock?
Yes, I do. I do think Deontay Hardy's a roster lock.
Okay, and why do you say that?
2 years, $13 million it doesn't seem like a lot. I think they invested about $6 or $7 million guaranteed. I just think they do value his skill set. He's one of the few players that has an ability to score score a touchdown anytime he touches the ball anywhere on the field. I don't think the Buffalo Bills have a ton of players like that. And I think the Buffalo Bills like his skill set and versatility, being a slot receiver and being a kick and punt returner as well.
All right. So then who is wide receiver 5? If you had to fill out a roster right now, 53-man, who's wide receiver 5?
So we got Diggs and Davis. We have Hardy, Sherfield.
Right.
I mean, you would want to think it's Khalil Shakir. I know Andy Isabella hasn't made any mistakes since becoming a Buffalo Bills player, but you would want to think Khalil Shakir is that guy. But with his mixed and up and down camp, and we've seen some drops translate to the preseason games, it's definitely opened the door for Andy Isabella to make a push for the 53-man roster.
And what's interesting is I just went back to look because I didn't hear Shakir's name or see his name at all tonight, and he didn't get one target, didn't have one pass thrown to him. I know he was playing special teams because he chased down that one long return that the Steelers had. But I'm curious as to what is going on with him, because there was so much hype around him in the draft as being one of the top receivers. And everybody said he was a steal in the 5th round last year. But I just don't understand why he didn't get playing time. Last year with all the injuries the Bills had. He seems like he's not getting a run this year. Like the first preseason game, he had a couple targets. This week he didn't. I don't even know if he was on the field other than special teams. So what's your take on like what do you make of that? Like Andy Isabella, guy they signed off the street with, he's got a track record. He's been in the league since 2019, but he's on his third team. So what's the reason why he's not been able to stay in one spot for an extended period of time? And now here he is seemingly outperforming Shakir. Like, what's your take on that whole situation? Because I would be in love with Andy Isabella, and it should be noted that he took the first return tonight. Like, it wasn't Deontay Hardy, it was Andy Isabella that got the first return on kickoff tonight, and I think that needs to be noted on top of the stuff that we're seeing from practice and hearing about how he's coming along in the new darling of the Bills offense. But what's your take? Because then you have Justin Shorter sitting there, who was also a 5th round pick, same as Khalil Shakir. Like I guess the last 3 are kind of where I'm trying to figure out, what's what. I guess the Andy Isabella thing to me, like, is he ahead? Do you have him ahead of Khalil Shakir? Do you have Shakir ahead of him? Like, where's that whole thing line up with you?
Well, it's definitely going to be tough. It's definitely going to be tough, and I also think we have to look at the Bills front office and in terms of how they value players. Khalil Shakir is drafted by the Buffalo Bills regime as opposed to a street free agent in Andy Isabella. But what Andy Isabella do bring to the table is speed and explosiveness. And unlike Justin Shorter, who was a 5th round pick, and unlike Khalil Shakir, who was a 5th round pick, Andy Isabella was a 2nd round pick back in 2019. So he was viewed and looked at as a guy that's going to come in being based on where he was selected. He was viewed as a guy that's going to come in and can contribute right away, and it didn't work out for him for a couple of teams for whatever reason. But what he do have, unlike the other players, the younger players for the Buffalo Bills receivers, is an understanding of the game, the understanding of practices and how to be a pro, and understanding the speed of the game. Right. So he has that advantage in having the experience of understanding the nuances of defenses and understanding zone concepts a bit better and understanding the speed and flow of the game a bit better than a 5th round pick from Boise State and Khalil Shakir, and a 5th round pick who jumped all over college in Penn State and Florida before he was finally able to find a home and contribute as a 5th year or 6th year senior in Justin Shorter. So Andy Isabella is definitely going to make it difficult on the Buffalo Bills front office in terms of who's going to get cut to bring that roster down to a 53, because in my opinion, Andy Isabella is a guy that's versatile, that's explosive, and I don't think there's enough players on the Buffalo Bills team that possess that ability to score anywhere he touched the ball. So Andy Isabella is definitely going to make it interesting and tough on the younger receivers for the Buffalo Bills and the front office and the management there.
I saw a comment about James Cook and Latavius Murray. It wasn't a very favorable one. So how do you feel? Let's jump to running backs. We didn't get to see a good chunk of, James Cook tonight, which I didn't think we would. We got a couple carries. Latavius Murray, who I'm always going to say this whenever I talk about Latavius Murray, he's a large human, very large human. I would not want to meet up with him, past the line of scrimmage. And then we got Damian Harris. So you think the Bills are carrying three running backs, or what?
Number one, I do think the Buffalo Bills would carry 3 running backs ideally, but I also think that Damian Harris and his injuries and his knee is starting to become an issue. He went out again tonight. He had his injury. He's supposed to be, or ideally speaking, when I thought of him, so when he signed to the Buffalo Bills, I would have thought of him as the number 2 running back for the Bills, and he doesn't seem like he's getting the proper footing and getting injuries over and over. So I'm slightly concerned with that. But as far as the rest of the Buffalo Bills running backs, ideally, I would think that it will be 3 running backs on the roster.
So would you be comfortable with Latavius Murray being RB2 instead of Damian Harris?
I wouldn't be comfortable. It's not bad, but I don't
Yeah.
think it. I don't think it scares anybody.
Yeah.
Within the NFL and within that division, if Latavius Murray was the running back too. And again, uh, I don't think the Buffalo Bills are bad at running back. Are they great? I don't think so. But it starts in the trenches. If you have the ability to run block and to protect your gaps and to control the line of scrimmage, your running backs, even if they're average, your running backs can get the job done. They will be capable of getting the job done if the team was capable of moving the ball up front in the trenches. So I think it starts up there first before we talk about the running backs. But I understand the conversation.
All right. So I agree with you to an extent. I mean, I think that if there's an injury situation, and the Damian Harris thing, the signing felt like it was just one of the most underrated signings of Brandon Beane's tenure. He was sitting out there, he gave him a minimal deal, and the guy, when healthy, is a touchdown machine. We saw it firsthand. Everybody remembers the win game, right? That big long run that he had against the Bills. Um, I I do see your point about being concerned because you want that 1-2 punch, and I thought that Cook was going to be the speed guy, the guy that's going to make you miss, or the guy that would the screen pass, swing pass, whatever. And then Damian Harris was going to be your red zone guy. Anything inside the 20, 15, 10, 5, goal to go situations. I thought that was going to be him, but if he can't stay healthy, which was a concern, everybody talked about it, and that I believe that's why the Bills got him on the deal that they got him on, was there was some injury concerns. But I mean, with James Cook, I'm 100% set with him doing what he does and carrying the bulk of the carries. Like he's not going to be a 25 or 30 carry back, but he's going to be the guy that's going to go for 20 carries, maybe catch 5 or 6 passes. And I think that he's going to progress. And I absolutely think he's going to have a breakout year. And I'm hoping that the Bills can finally get a 1,000-yard rusher. That's, it's been since LaShawn McCoy 2017 since we've had a 1,000-yard rusher. So that would be nice to have that. I do want to see some screen passes. I do want to see some stuff dialed up for the running backs. Again, we didn't see much tonight because the offense, the ones weren't really on the field much. And I think then Dorsey just changed what he was planning on doing because he was dealing with Matt Barkley and Kyle Allen. So if you guys haven't smashed the like button, please do that if you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Subscribe to the channel. That way we can get some more engagement each and every week. Rich, any more takeaways from this game? I know that we were kind of ranting back and forth in our group chat. Anything else that, the good, the bad, the questionable, anything else you want to get off your chest while we're here?
So the main goal for, in my opinion, for the Buffalo Bills offense coming into this season was to take stress off Josh Allen. I want to take stress. We want to prolong Josh Allen's career. We don't want him scrambling all over the place all the time to try to look like Superman to make something happen. We want other players to be able to step up and have ability to make plays so we can take stress off our franchise quarterback that we all feel does too much at times. And it starts up front with the offensive line. They have to be able to pass protect. They have to be able to run block, and they don't have to be able to stay upright and keep the penalties down. We have way too much pre-snap penalties, false start penalties, holding penalties. We're going to have to find a way to keep our mistakes down and keep Josh Allen upright, keep him clean, and keep the offense stress free as possible, so we can prolong Josh Allen's career. That's the main takeaway that I see tonight. It's only preseason, but right tackle Spencer Brown coming into his third season, we want to see, as Buffalo Bills fans, uh, upgrade in his skill level compared to his last 2 years with the Buffalo Bills. And thus far, he hasn't given us a reason to feel good about the right tackle position moving forward. So I hope This is just a bump in the road for Spencer Brown, and hopefully it can get rectified sooner than later because we have a pretty strong test coming up for us with the New York Jets September 11 in week 1.
So I'm going to ask you this straight up: the Bills add a right tackle in the next week?
Yes,
Really
yeah,
interesting.
yes. I would be looking. I would be looking to add offensive line help for the Buffalo Bills.
Make a call to one Jason Peters and see what he's up to.
Definitely. It doesn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt. It
I mean,
wouldn't
as
hurt.
long as he doesn't retire on us, right? I don't know. Bean's got a habit of signing guys that are like, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'll retire. Um,
Mm.
does Brandon Bean and do the Buffalo Bills look for a middle linebacker this week?
Uh, I would have to say
I'd say next
yes.
2 weeks because I think after the roster cuts start coming, when they
Yes.
got to start slimming down the rosters, do you think that they get a guy? Is it a name guy or is it just middle of the road guy? What do you think?
It's roster cuts, right? So how great can they be if they're getting cut? The hope is that that particular team that's cutting that particular player is just have a surplus of good players at that position, and we can capitalize and getting that player, whether it's at tackle or at middle linebacker. I believe Brandon Bean in what he says in terms of he's always looking to upgrade at any position on the football team. And I think he's going to do so, whether it's right tackle, whether it's middle linebacker, or that's another position we're not talking about right now.
I cannot read that comment. If Akeem, if you there we go. Drafting got to be looked at here as well. 2 linebackers in the third. Yeah, we spoke about that earlier.
Mm.
I mean, the Bills did find Jordan Phillips during cut down. Remember a few years ago? That's when they got Jordan Phillips from the Dolphins. So I mean, there might be some guys in there, but like to your point earlier about finding the diamond in the rough, like I feel like sometimes, and I'll go back to Spencer Brown. I think he was drafted based off of his physical attributes, not based off of the film and what he actually accomplished. Now, did he play well at Northern Iowa? Yes, he played well. Obviously, he was drafted for a reason, but I think Brandon Bean sometimes gets enamored with, and his scouting department, I'm not just going to put it on Brandon Bean, but the scouting department and Sean McDermott included get enamored with the physical specimens that they feel like, well, he just needs to be fine tuned, like the Tremaine Edmonds of the world. He was a physical freak. We can just fine tune him into whatever we want a middle linebacker to look like for the Buffalo Bills defense. Josh Allen. Well, he's wild, but we can see all the traits. They're there. We just need to get him to hone in on those few things to make him successful. And it's like I feel like they did that with Spencer Brown, and it's just I don't know how long are we supposed to wait for it to just click for him? Like, I don't know. Like, Deion Dawkins, by his third year, was playing at a Pro Bowl level by his third year. I'm sorry. I don't see that for Spencer Brown this year. I just don't see him turning a switch on and all of a sudden he's mauling people and he's protecting Josh Allen's blind side. Like, I just don't see that happening. But I don't know. We'll have to find out because you got to remember these guys have invested already 2 years in him. So do they want to cut bait and say, look, do we have another Cody Ford situation on our hands where we tried and tried and tried and tried until we just couldn't try anymore? And then, then they just have to move on. But they got to figure it out because David Quessenberry is not going to work at right tackle. And unless
Well, I'll tell you.
Spencer Brown does something remarkable all week in practice, and then he does play in next week's game and he looks better, I don't know. But I don't want to hear in about practice and these 5 guys need to gel. Like, they've been practicing now for over a month. Like, yes, this was the first game with all 5 of them starting and playing considerable reps, but like, I don't know. What do you think? So is there any other concerns with the offensive line and not just Spencer Brown for you? Is there What would be your second biggest concern with the Bills' offensive line if we had to grade them or gauge them or whatever?
That's an excellent question. I think that Spencer Brown is the obvious right now, quote unquote, liability on the offensive line for the Buffalo Bills. But I don't think anybody in particular has looked great. I don't think Deion Dawkins looked great. He had a couple penalties. I seen him get beat. We're talking about Spencer Brown because he's the obvious liability, but I don't think anybody amongst that line has played great. We just need solid play. Am I overly concerned with anybody else? I seen Connor McGovern. He had a false start. I still don't know about him much yet. I got to see more of him. I know we signed him to our standards, a lucrative contract, so I want to see more of McGovern. We know about Mitch Morrison, his concussion history. He's an older guy. He's a guy that is not necessarily a physical player, but he is a mobile, athletic player that does a good job when he gets out to the second level. Torrance is a rookie, so we're going to expect some bumps in the road from our rookie in Osiris Torrance. The problem with the rookie in Osiris Torrance is that he's right next to Spencer
I'm
Brown
so glad you said that because I was
on the
just about to say
offensive
that.
line. So
Yeah.
that right there is this is why Spencer Brown, we look at him as now, okay, you're a third round pick, you're going into your third year, you have a rookie right guard next to you. We're looking for you to step up and help along this front because you're going into your third year. And if you can't do that, it's going to be a bigger problem because it's going to be a trickle effect and go down to our rookie guard. So it's definitely some concerns that can happen along the season with the Buffalo Bills O line that hopefully we don't run into. But Spencer Brown didn't give us a good showing today. And hopefully we have some things on tape where Aaron Cromer can get with him and get better before September 11th.
This is I'm gonna put this back up. I'm glad they worked on cleaning up the penalties. So, how many times were we watching games last year? And as good as the Bills' offense is, was, and will be, how many times did we watch a game where the Bills started out at their 15-yard line and they're just progressively making their way down the field, down the field. They get across the 50. Josh looks good. Running game's going. They get to about the 40-ish yard line, and then all the dumb penalties start happening. The holding penalties, the offensive pass interference penalties, the false start penalties happen. For a coach that preaches habits and discipline, and we know how he is as a person, as a coach, as a human being. We know how he is with how he just, you know, he explains things and how he talks in his press conferences and how he is out in the public. Like, he's a very decisive man. For this team to just not show discipline year after year, it's confusing to me. I'm not saying that they're one of the worst penalized teams. It's situational penalties that seems like we shoot ourselves in the foot. It happened tonight, all game long. I think they had 9 penalties in the first half, 9 or 10 penalties in the first half. It was insane. 2 of the drives that Josh looked really good on were ended by penalties. So, and we're getting close to the hour mark, and I know I don't want to keep rehashing them because this is a preseason game, but how frustrating is it watching this team with so much talent just constantly shoot themselves in the foot? And do you think this is something that is correctable as we head, less than about 3 weeks into the season? Is this something that we can fix?
Well, you just said it. You just said Sean McDermott is having this problem for a number of years. We've been having this problem with the penalties for a number of years now. So, can we correct it? No, we hope that the problem. We hope we can mask it. I don't think it's correctable. It's about masking it. Now it's about calling the necessary plays to help the offensive line along the way, because it seems to me as if the more physical the defensive front, the more penalties and the more things may seem to happen that doesn't favor the Bills. So we just have to find a way of doing a better job. Definitely everything is mental pre-snap, right? Pre-snap penalties, everything is mental. But if you're getting beat initially, right? It's going a mental clock is going to get in your head. Yo, I got beat by this guy twice. I got to get off this ball,
Right.
right? So everything is one play at a time, and we got to put as coaches. The coaches have to do their best to put the offensive and the defensive side of the ball in the best positions to win that play. And I think that's the most important thing. We gotta break this down to the lowest common denominator. We gotta win, not that quarter, not a set of plays. We gotta win this play. And when this play is over, we gotta find a way to win the next play. And I think that's the mentality the Buffalo Bills have to go in with for the duration of the season.
I just hope that they're not approaching the whole show that we just talked about with blinders on, and they're going to expect Josh to just be Josh, because as good as Josh is, and we saw it a couple times tonight where he was running all over the place, as good as he is at doing that, imagine how much better and how much improved Josh Allen would be if he had some time. And people always throw the stats out about who is one of the best quarterbacks facing pressure, and it's Josh Allen. Well, yeah, it's because he's pressured more than just about every other quarterback in the NFL. We don't know what Josh Allen looks like behind a stalwart offensive line. We don't know what Josh looks like with one of the old Dallas Cowboys line from a couple years ago, where you can just be a statue back there and just pick apart a defense. We don't know what that looks like. So we can't really compare what he is to all these other quarterbacks that with pressure rates, because that he's pressured all the time. That's all he gets is pressured. And I don't know. I just hope that there's either two things need to happen. The Bills need to look outside at a right tackle, or Spencer Brown's going to figure it out. And I don't feel too comfortable about the second part of that statement. But this has been a preseason reaction to the Bills Steelers. Bills lose 27-15 week 2. We gave our reactions. We gave the good, the bad, the ugly. Rich, before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to talk about after this week's, I don't want to say devastating loss, but it's we were looking forward to, because the ones we're playing, and I think we've seen Josh come out in the second preseason game the past couple of years and just light up a team, and then he goes and sits down and puts a headset on. So anything else you want to add before we get out of here?
It's preseason, ladies and gentlemen. We can't get, obviously it's definitely frustrating when your team has Super Bowl aspirations and they come out and they perform the way they do. But it's definitely preseason. It's definitely something where the Buffalo Bills can go back and look at film and take this time to correct. Sometimes it's good that these things happen during these times where the games do not count. Now I understand we live in a social media era, right? And I think because we live in that social media era where it's Twitter and Instagram and there's people that can talk and divisional foe fans that can see plays, and I think it's more frustrating because we live in that era, right? But at the end of the day, it's just preseason. Yeah. We have things that happen that's correctable. Penalties are indeed correctable. We hope we can fix it. A lot of things that happen, miscommunications that happen along the defensive front, along the middle linebacker, all them things are correctable, and we have a chance to make those adjustments. So hopefully the Buffalo Bills can look at film and make those adjustments. I know it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, it's still preseason, and we're still a hell of a football team.
I will say this too, and then we'll get out of here. This is not what you're going to see from Sean McDermott week 1. I can almost guarantee it. Am I concerned about middle linebacker? Absolutely. But I can tell you about the rest of this defense. This is not what you're going to get from Sean McDermott. There's absolutely no way that this man, who Akeem will tell you, do what got you hired, is not going to make adjustments and is not going to figure this thing out and turn this thing around. He had to have had the utmost confidence in his roster of defensive players to say, you know what, I'm putting it all on me and I'm going to call the defensive plays this year. So that's going to be it for us. We'll be back next week. Preseason will be wrapped up by then. So catch us every Saturday night, 9 o'clock on the Built in Buffalo Network, which is YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. As always, go Bills.